how do you react to the nesting idea? I mean, we all were nesting for 3 months or thereabouts from March till like June. We were in our nests. So there's a gradual move to the contactless world. Everybody is afraid of touching anything that can bring the virus. So now that's in the US. Now we are in Nigeria. We live here, and we've tried the idea of nesting, to borrow that, for a couple of months. In your world, and this is our world, but the majority of people online right now, how do you see that imported into this context, and how can we use that concept, for instance, to improve our lives? Like I said, we've got leaders who are in our world in development, people who are in business, people who are in financial services, people who are self-employed, and they're thinking, how do I reinvent myself? Why I say that is also because the level of disruption we've experienced, and in the words of Clayton Christensen, this our guy with disruptive innovation, he warns that most of the time when you have disruptive innovation, it's going to wipe out the middleman. So if you are rendering a service that's in the middle of the value chain, you're at risk. How do we work in this world of in the nests and then overcome that challenge of being wiped out as middlemen?
So when you started, I was flowing until you brought the middleman into the equation. I'm not sure how much I can talk about that. But incidentally, I was in a discussion session, with some of my mentees. It was a group session last weekend, and we were talking. So these were couples as families. We were discussing how people had been, what had been the impact of the pandemic on the families, how people responded, trying to probe around resilience in the household. We looked at the stats about increased domestic violence and things like that. But as each person shared, certain common trends kind of came out. Number one, everybody's had more than adequate time to really think through things. Lots of soak time. People have re-examined their lives. People have rediscovered family members. A number of guys who didn't know much about their children. And so they're looking at the world through different lenses. But what was interesting was some of them now saying, hey, work-wise, because we had some entrepreneurs in the room, you had some HR folks in the room, and people across different divides. One particular guy had not been able to go into the oil and gas field to do much work just because of all the concerns and the extra time they have to be in isolation before going in and things like that. And he was like, I really need a new career path. So part of what came out of those conversations were, some people have got to reskill themselves, and some already started. A number of people have been taking online courses. I had an HR professional who's dived into the IT world, and he says, I've been trying to project what kind of IT requirements the new world, the new normal will require. It's too late in the day for me to be a basic or core IT person, so I've got to go into the territory that is okay enough for me to swim in, but then I can build on my HR skills, and my eyes popped out, HR to IT, what's going on here? This person hasn't lost a job or anything, but it's just positioning herself. Another guy, financial services entrepreneur, said, hey, I have a lot of international clients. I suddenly appreciate now that I had strong links with them because I can't travel, and it's those links and those relations, the strength of my relationships that I'm riding on, and I have to build on those so that my interests are taken care of without me having to hop on a plane and get down there. But what he's also doing is creating new products for the local ones, because he said the situation has disrupted his business and some of his products have become redundant. So he undertakes what he calls constructive and creative downtimes to really, just more like ideation hubs and things like that, to really come up with new products, and he's working with other people that are not traditional partners with him to begin to see how they can come up with these new products. And he says, hey, he will let some of us know about that in case we're interested. So for me, a number of people are going to have to reinvent themselves, but there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Each person is going to look in their context and see, what else do I have? So maybe I was doing this kind of job, but is the totality of my being and all my skills limited to just that job alone? Or do I have to bring other things to the table? And therefore, which pathways should I begin to explore? I know somebody else who's undertaking some cognitive therapy courses right now. It says, look, a lot of people are going to need cognitive behavior therapy courses. It says a lot of people are going to need help in some of these areas, and I'm positioning myself to be better equipped and also to be licensed so that I don't get slammed for practicing outside my competency. So people are positioning themselves. Now, for organizations, they're going to have to really look at it. For us in church, we found out, fortunately, we've always had online presence. So we've always aired our services. And so when churches were closed and places of worship were closed generally, it did not hit us as badly as it hit other churches. But then we had to ask a question. How we had to ascertain the integrity of our database to be sure that all our folks would be able to keep connecting with us. But for different reasons, either due to connectivity issues or data charges, some people dropped off. And so you had to start looking at, could you get them on a radio platform that would cost them less to subscribe to, but they could still be aware? Could you use WhatsApp, since almost everybody's on WhatsApp across the world, to get certain messages across to them so they don't miss out completely, especially the vulnerable ones that you were thinking of providing humanitarian assistance to, and let them know the dates for some of those kind of things. For me on the home front, it was almost like we're going to have a set time every night in which we will do a video call as a family to be able to then update ourselves. But in the course of the day, because of the crazy hours, they knew not to call me, which was strange because prior to the pandemic, I could have 4 to 6 quick calls in the course of the day. And it didn't matter what, very few meetings that I won't excuse myself to say, my boss is calling, which is my wife. I got to take this call, or quickly send her a text, a message response to say, hey, sweetheart, I'll get back to you in about 15 to 30 minutes. So people have had to figure out whether in the not-for-profit or the corporate world, how best to do things. And the easiest one is what all of us have done. A lot of people have operated from home. Because we're all doing it, we may take it for granted, but it's a big deal for those who didn't practice this before. Those of us who were already using teleconferencing and video conferencing facilities, it was not a big deal. It was just that it was not the only mode. It was one of several modes. And right now, it's become the only one. And so you then try to put more context into it by having people make sure they have video calls with you so you can have eye contact. Otherwise, 83% of your communication is already lost because you don't have those other cues.
Thank you so very much.